It's time for Jon David On Law, a legal perspective with Prosecutor Jon David, candidate for District 13 District Attorney. For more information about Jon David's campaign to bring honest, integrity-driven law enforcement to Bladen, Brunswick, and Columbus counties, please check out his website at jondavidforda.com. And now, along with Jon David, here's the host of the program, Robbie Kendall.
Well, hello again, everybody, and we welcome you into another exciting edition of Jon David On Law, our chance to sit and chat with Prosecutor Jon David. And John, of course, you're vying to be the next district attorney for Bladen, Brunswick, and Columbus counties, and that's a leadership position. So people want to know, when you're in a leadership position, what your plan is. How are you going to make things better? And it's sort of a broad question, but we'll start there. In a broad spectrum, not under the microscope, but as a whole, what do you plan to do differently than the previous administrations?
I am a man with a plan, Robbie, and there is a profound difference between the way that I fight crime and have over my 15-year career versus what's currently happened in the 13th District. We can go over some of those talking points if you like. I call it my crime-fighting strategy.
One of the things that you and I have talked about many times, and one of the reasons I think you're a great candidate for this office, is that you want to give victims a voice in the courtroom. What do you mean by that?
I have a very victim-centered philosophy when I prosecute crimes. I realize that we are their surrogates in the courtroom, and we have a moral duty, if not legal duty, to be the best that we can for them. The embarrassing reality of our jobs is that when a victim calls 911, they're not calling for a specific person, they're calling for help, and there's a difference. Victims do not get to choose the police officer that shows up at the crime scene. They don't get to choose the prosecutor who's giving the closing argument in the courtroom. I believe, and my team will believe, that we have to elevate our game for them and their benefit, because they didn't choose us. The people chose us through the form of an election, and we have, an obligation to be the best we can for them.
You use a phrase that I had never heard before, and it's an interesting phrase. I'd like you to go into it a little bit. It's called the police-prosecutor team approach to fighting crime.
That is the cornerstone of my strategy, Robbie. It's a very proactive approach, which involves true partnership with law enforcement in this area. I have learned to be somewhat of a hybrid police officer, lawyer, if you will. I don't consider myself a cop with a law degree. I believe I'm a district attorney, and there's a difference. But I've learned a lot about my role of being a prosecutor by actually being out on the streets, at crime scenes at 2 o'clock in the morning, personally spearheading in murder investigations from a crime scene, and working side by side with my law enforcement officers to achieve maximum justice in the biggest cases in our area.
One of the larger problems or perceived problems some people have had, especially as it relates to Columbus and Bladen counties, is perceived favoritism under the law, that certain people have gotten certain breaks based on maybe who they knew or who their family was. How can you assure us that your strategy eliminates that when Jon David's the next district attorney?
One of the good things about not originally being from this area is I don't owe anybody a thing. I can truly look at the facts and the law in a particular case and render true justice according to those guideposts and not be influenced by impermissible considerations like that you mentioned.
Everybody has their area of interest, John, things that they take a personal focus on. As district attorney, what type of cases will you take a real personal interest in?
I believe it's important for a district attorney to lead by example and set the tone for the entire team in the office by being present in the courtroom. The biggest cases in the office are also the most visible. I personally specialize in the prosecution of violent crime cases, the rapists, the murderers, the child molesters. Murder is something that's very near and dear to my heart because there is no bigger case than those that involve the loss of life. And so meeting with victims, families at their time of need, and being that light in the darkness for them, and then shepherding those cases through the system is something that's initially going to be a very big priority for me.
Talked about many times that you will assume personal responsibility and leadership for the biggest cases in the courtroom. That means you're going to be the guy leading the charge.
I am. I don't want to mislead people. I can't personally try every case that happens. There are literally thousands of cases every year that are going to come through that office. Still, I think it's important for the DA to select out from the herd the cases that most impact that community and let people know who we stand, what we stand for, and what we value.
John, one of the things you've talked about many times is a community approach to fighting crime. What do you mean by that?
It's so vitally important for a district attorney to build bridges of trust with all members of the community to proactively prevent crime. I've come to realize that an equally important role of the district attorney isn't just to prosecute people and put them in prison for the rest of their life. but it's to prevent something before it happens. Because after all, Robbie, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And when you proactively partner with the religious leaders, the civic leaders, and the business leaders in any community, good things start to happen. You can head off problems before they start. I've been doing that for 15 years, and if people let me, I'll be doing that right here in the 13th District.
I'm always amazed to open our local paper and see some of the just terrible crimes people commit, and then I'm even more amazed at what seems like the easy sentences they are given for these crimes. Is that a result of a current administration not working hard enough to convince the judge to put these people away longer?
It's hard to say because I'm not there. I haven't had the ability yet to handle those cases. I will tell you this. If everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. For me, I'm going to focus most clearly on the people that are hurting other people, the violent crime cases, and the repeat offenders, what we call habitual offenders in the system, and make sure that we get those people off the street. And you're going to see, I think, a real difference almost immediately in the flavor of the courthouse.
We talk about this in all of our conversations because obviously people have a choice to make, and we'll wrap up today's conversation with this. Compare yourself to your opponent. How are your strategies different, do you think, and why is your strategy the better one in terms of leadership?
Well, I know who I am and I know why I'm here. I believe I'm called to do exactly what I do. And this crime-fighting strategy is something that I've developed over a 15-year period of fighting crime. I have been a prosecutor since the day that I've graduated law school, and I've cultivated an ability to figure out what's important and how to lead. I've never heard my opponent articulate a crime-fighting strategy. I'm not sure he has one. If he does, I think it's important for him to get out there and talk about it, because people should focus on what the plan of the person is and make the decisions based on merit and ability, not things like political affiliation or where you're from, but merit and ability. Does this district attorney candidate have a plan, and can he execute that plan? My name is Jon David, and I believe that I can.
All right, John, as always, we say thanks for your time. We'll look forward to chatting with you again in the very near future on another edition of Jon David On Law.
Thanks for listening to Jon David On Law, a legal perspective with Prosecutor Jon David. Jon David, candidate for District 13 District Attorney, invites you to learn more about his plan to bring honest, integrity-driven law enforcement to Bladen, Brunswick, and Columbus counties by visiting his website at jondavidforda.com. Tune in next time for another edition of Jon David On Law.